Hello. Like Galina Petrovna said, thank you for coming on this early eve of Easter. Like she said, the most devoted are here. Thank you for being here. I would like to tell you about my favorite city in America, maybe even my favorite city in the world, Washington, D.C. By the end of the lecture, I hope that you will know why it is my favorite. So before I start, I want you to know that if you have any questions, it's a question about a word, it's a question about anything about Washington, D.C., just raise your hand and we will talk about it. So.
Don't be afraid to interrupt, just raise your hand.
Yes, I want questions. Do not be afraid. So my first question for you is, where is Washington, D.C.? Now, before you answer, if you don't know, it's okay. I will tell you a quick story. The first time I was doing this lecture, I asked my American friend, Christine, who is actually giving a lecture today, I asked her, where is Washington? She didn't know. She is an American. She didn't know our capital city. So if you don't know, it's okay. Don't worry. So is it number 1 or number 2? Raise your hand if you think Washington, D.C., number 1. That's where it is. Number 1. Okay, maybe number 1. Raise your hand if you think it's number 2. Almost everyone. Good job. Well, number 1 is Washington, but it is Washington, the state, so partially correct. And number 2 is Washington, D.C., of course. So Russians usually call Washington, D.C. Washington. But Americans don't do this because if someone says Washington, they don't know, is it the state or is it the city? So to be clear, often Americans will just say D.C. And it is clear. Everyone knows we are talking about Washington, D.C. It's what people usually say. If you live in Washington, D.C., or nearby, then sometimes you will just call it the district. But it's for people who really live there. Otherwise, it might not be clear. So here's a closer view of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. As you can see, it's right between Maryland and Virginia. So right there in between. So I have another question for you. True or false? D.C. is the second biggest city, and the biggest city is New York. So New York and then D.C. Those are the 2 biggest cities in America.
It's false.
Everyone thinks it's false. Everyone knows a lot. So what do you think? It's like the 3rd, 4th, 5th? Any guesses?
10th.
10th maybe?
To the end. Closer to the end.
Closer to the end? Well, actually, D.C. is the 24th biggest city in America. So let's look at all of the cities in America that are bigger than D.C. I think it will surprise you. Take a look. So at New York, can't quite see, but New York has about 9 million people. 9 million people live in New York. So take a look at all of the cities that are bigger than D.C. Some of them you might not even know. Columbus, Ohio. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. That's much bigger than D.C. El Paso, Texas. Fort Worth. All of these cities, bigger than our capital. And here we see D.C. at the bottom has about 630,000 people that live here. Not very big. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. But this number may not be the whole truth, okay? Because people who live in D.C., people who work in D.C., it's different from people who live in D.C. So most of the people that work in D.C. don't live in the city. They live in Maryland or Virginia. During the work week, the population of D.C. is about 1 million, which puts it higher on the list.
And how long does it take them to get to their work?
It's a good question. It depends. I actually lived outside of DC for a while. I lived in a place called Arlington, Virginia. It took me 30 minutes to get to work.
In a car.
Not in a car. Actually, it's a perfect question. We went on the metro, and this is the metro. So I went from here in Arlington, and I took the metro in and got off here at McPherson Square. And from in the peak hour, when there's most traffic, there's most people on the metro, it took me 30 minutes to get to work. Not too bad. The metro's pretty great. And you see the metro, does it look easy? Does it look difficult?
Rather easy.
It's pretty easy. This is a pretty easy metro. And it shows you again how small and convenient DC is. And to really show you this point, I want to compare the DC metro to other metros. For example, New York City. Take a look. How crazy is that? It's nuts compared to DC. And another example, your own Moscow metro, also much, much bigger than DC. So DC is very small. And I also want to add, while we are talking about the Moscow metro, DC's metro is not as beautiful as the Moscow metro. And I'll just show you a picture. Pretty simple. A simple, plain, not so attractive, not so exciting metro. But you know, it gets you where you want to go. So, very convenient and very clean as well. So, let's talk a little bit more about DC's design. DC is a planned city. It was planned by Charles L'Enfant, and George Washington asked Charles L'Enfant to plan DC in 1791. And he based his design on European cities that he had seen, cities like Paris, Amsterdam, Milan. So it's designed to be like a European city. And as you can see up here, DC is divided into 4 different areas, the biggest being the northwest quadrant. The northwest is where most people live who live in DC. They live in the northwest. And the southeast is where Capitol Hill is located. So DC is very well designed. It's very, very easy to navigate. You saw the metro is very easy. And the streets, very easy. So here we have the streets that are from east to west are letters. So A, B, C Street. Those are the streets that are east to west. The streets that are north to south are numbered. So for example, 15th Street. And the streets that run across diagonally all are named after state streets. Wisconsin Avenue. As you may know, Pennsylvania Avenue, where the White House is. These are diagonal streets. Another question for you. True or false? DC is the first and only capital that America has ever had. True or false?
False.
You think false? Any other opinions? False, true?
After the War of Independence.
After the War of Independence?
The first and the only one.
After the War of Independence? Okay.
But before that.
Before that, no? So, actually, even after the War of Independence, America had different capitals until the 1800, the year 1800, when DC became the capital. So we have had 8 other capitals. Any guesses what city was the other capital? You think New York? It is
New
one.
Amsterdam, it was. New Amsterdam first.
New Amsterdam, no. New York was one.
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia was another. And actually, some other ones might surprise you. There's a city in New Jersey. Let's take a look. So we have Philadelphia, you guessed. Baltimore, Maryland was one. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, really small town. I've been there. It's ridiculous that this was the capital. I can't believe it. York, Pennsylvania. I've never been there. Had not even heard of it. Princeton, New Jersey, now is the home of the famous university, Princeton University. Annapolis, Maryland, home of the United States Naval Academy. It's a beautiful city, very small. Trenton, New Jersey, and New York, New York. But honestly, few people think of these as the capital. We consider them the capital because once they held United States Congress at one time, and then we can say it was the capital. But in 1800, Washington, D.C. became the capital. And according to the Constitution, D.C. is not a part of any state. As you saw, D.C. is next to Maryland and Virginia, but it's not a part of a state. It's not considered its own state. And this means that there is no senator from Washington, D.C. And you see these license plates in D.C. Some people laugh, the quote, taxation without representation. Has anyone heard this quote? Know where it comes from? It comes from the American Revolution, when early Americans were protesting the British. So this is an American Revolution statement that we should not have to pay taxes if we cannot vote on where our taxes are going. So right now, people who live in D.C. do not get to vote on their federal taxes. So this is on their license plates. If you go into the District of Columbia, you will see these license plates. They do have some kind of representation in Congress. They have a delegate, but this person can't vote. They can just sit in Congress and do nothing. And they do have something else. In an amendment in 1961, it gave D.C. some votes in the presidential elections. So D.C. has 3 electoral votes for presidential elections. It's not very many, but it's something. It's something at least. DC also is unlike any other US city in that you look across the skyline, it's not like New York, it's very flat. Why is this? Because land is very expensive there, so obviously people want really high buildings, but they can't build them. You're not allowed. Because of the Heights Building Act of 1910. So you can't build buildings taller than 130 feet, which is about 40 meters, or they cannot be taller than the street, the width of the street. Whichever one is shorter. That's the rule. And let's look, what are the tallest buildings in DC? As you can see, the Washington Monument is the tallest structure, but we don't consider that a building. After that, we have the Sacred Cathedral and the National Cathedral. So these are still not very high, still only 100 meters. So let's move forward into politics of DC. I will not go in too much to politics in America. What I want to give you is an understanding of political opinions inside DC. What do people in DC believe, and how does that compare to the rest of the country? So first I will tell you the rest of the country. How do they lean politically? It's about 50-50, Democrats and Republicans. So 53%, 53.9% of the House of Representatives is Republican, and 46.1% is Democrat. Pretty even. And the Senate is slightly Democrat, 55% Democrat and 45% Republican. So as you can see, the whole country is pretty even. What about DC? This is our capital city. What are DC's politics? What does the average person in DC believe politically? And this is pretty shocking. DC is the most liberal country, or the most liberal place in the entire country. So the most amount of registered Democrats. Remember, it's about 50-50 for the nation. 75% of people in DC are Democrat, only 7% Republican, and 18% other. So very, very liberal place. And not just a liberal place, but a very, very rich place. So here we have the top 5 richest neighborhoods in America. These are the top 5 richest neighborhoods in America. 3 of them are from the DC area. So, and these are really rich. This is an average of $600,000 per household that they make every single year, on average. So many people above that as well. And I want to focus on my personal favorite. It's a classic neighborhood in DC called Bethesda, Maryland. And this was on our list of richest neighborhoods in America. And Bethesda is incredible because it is the most highly educated neighborhood, most highly educated city in, or suburb of America. So we see here that 27.3% of Bethesda residents have some kind of advanced degree, some kind of doctorate degree. That's almost 1 out of every 3 people you meet will have a PhD, an MD, or a law degree. It's crazy. That's 1 out of every 3 people. And look at the average American person. Only 3%. So 3% of all Americans have PhD, MD, or a law degree. 1 out of every 3 people who live in Bethesda have this. It's the most highly educated town. Okay, so next, has anyone been to DC? Or maybe you want to go, you're interested in going.
Everybody wants.
Everyone wants to go. Perfect. So I want to talk about what do tourists do? When people come, they come to DC and they do certain things that every tourist must do. This is the biggest thing. If you do nothing else, you must ride these little Segway scooters. Every tourist does it. I took this picture. I saw this tour group, and a few seconds actually, after I took the picture, they all crashed. They all fell down. And I wanted to like run after them and take a bunch of pictures. I just didn't have the heart. I didn't do it, but it was really funny when this happened.
Is it part of fun? You have to fall down?
It was fun for me. It was fun for me. I think they all have those little helmets on, so they were safe, fortunately. So first, before we talk about what you do in DC, how do you get there? There are a couple options. The airport, there's 3 airports around DC. Dulles International Airport, Reagan International Airport, and Baltimore Washington International Airport in Baltimore. Like I said before, who remembers how many people in DC are Democrats? 75%. 75%. So many people in DC don't like Reagan. They don't like Reagan, so they call this airport the International Airport. They don't say Reagan. So if they ask you, did you come in from the International Airport? It means Reagan. They just don't like Reagan. You can also take a train into DC, or this is my car. You can drive there. I've done it many times. The traffic is terrible, so it will take you a very long time. And many Americans find their way to DC through an 8th grade field trip. And this is a picture of me asleep, waiting to go to DC. You can see the excitement. So you take a bus, very common. Most Americans take this trip in school. Most schools bring kids to DC. It's an important part of our history, and it's important for kids to see.
And do they pay anything for the trip?
They pay for the trip.
And no matter how far they leave?
So I don't know if kids in California do it, but I live in Ohio, and it's pretty far away. And they get a big bus and send us there. But I can't speak about people in California. The first thing that we do when we get there is we visit the National Mallway. The National Mallway is filled with any museums. The White House is nearby. Here's the Capitol building. many, many memorials that we'll see pictures of soon. This is just a view of the National Mallway. Again, I took this picture, just beautiful sky, and like usual, they're building for some kind of event. Just like the Red Square, you rarely see the Red Square just completely open. They're building some kind of event, concert, something. Especially during the summer, people love to have concerts on the National Mallway. Most famously on the National Mallway is the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. And keep in mind, the Smithsonian Museum and all museums on the Mallway are free. So if you live there, you can go there as many times as you want. It's free. And you can see different things there. At the National Mallway, at the Smithsonian Museum, you can see the Hope Diamond, you can see things that have been in movies before, like The Wizard of Oz, you can see her red slippers. That's pretty nice. Another museum I highly recommend. This is probably my favorite museum in DC. Of course, it's very sad, very emotional, but it's a beautiful museum. It's beautifully done. It's just absolutely excellent. If you're interested in Native American culture, so the Native Americans who are originally from America, this is a museum that documents many, many different Indian tribes. You can see drums, you can see animal skins, so many things in this museum. There's the National Air and Space Museum. So all kinds of planes. You can do rides to see what it's like to be in space. And sometimes they show movies here. They show like Batman, The Dark Knight in this big, huge area. It's amazing. Also recommended is the National Archives, where is the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and this was where they shot the movie National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. So Nicolas Cage has been here. That's why you should go. And does anyone know what happened in Ford's Theater? This would be amazing knowledge of American history. What happened here?
Lincoln was shot.
Exactly. Lincoln was shot. He was shot right up here in the presidential box. He was watching a play, and he was shot by John Wilkes Booth on April 15th. But he did not die. He was taken across the street to the Peterson house where he actually died. And you can see the bed where he died. It's creepy, it's scary, but very powerful. And if you go to the Ford's Theater, you can see some kind of reenactment of this. It's very fun. One of my favorites. Other things to do in DC. There's so many beautiful memorials, like the Vietnam Wall, the World War II Memorial. The World War II Memorial has every state in America. You can find your state and take a picture in front of it, like from Ohio. Arlington National Cemetery is full of memorials as well. And here at the Arlington National Cemetery, we have our Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Right above this tomb, and I think this is a quote that is on many nations' tombs of the unknown soldier in various languages. Here rests in honored glory a fallen soldier known but to God. And it is very difficult to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery, especially today. There's not much space in this cemetery. And here an example of a few guidelines, a few rules for being buried in Arlington National Cemetery. You must maybe be an active soldier, someone who received a medal, like the Medal of Honor. You maybe are a prisoner of war, or the widow or widower of a serviceman who was lost at sea, fell out of a plane, or who was already buried at Arlington National. So very strict guidelines, who can be buried and who cannot be buried. The Iwo Jima Memorial, very classic, very beautiful, and this is at Arlington National Cemetery, nearby. So we have this myth that there are 6 soldiers, but 13 hands on the memorial. People say that the 13th hand is the hand of God. So if you count, some people say there are 13 hands, not 12, on the memorial. But actually, this is just a myth. And another famous quote that I want to read to you, this is on the Iwo Jima Memorial. Amazing quote. In honor and memory of men of the United States Marine Corps who have given their lives to their country since November 10th, 1775, uncommon valor was a common virtue. So we call it the Iwo Jima Memorial, or some people call it the Marine Corps Memorial. Around DC, there are also lots of presidential memorials. We have the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and the FDR Memorial, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Just a quick story about the Lincoln Memorial. Last summer, someone threw green paint on it. So it was completely shut down, and it had to be restored for a little while. I don't believe they ever found who did this, but it was a sad situation. And of course, you have to see the White House. You can still take tours of the White House, maybe get a sight of Barack Obama, who knows.
What is the height of the White House?
The height of the White House, I don't know that. I don't know the height.
But it's very low, yeah?
It's not above any other buildings. It's like a normal size building. And you must, as a tourist, you must take selfies. So actually, this is a picture. I didn't have anyone to take my picture. I wanted a picture of myself in front of the White House. Right before I took the picture of me in the White House, this truck drove by. So that's my picture of me and the White House. Oops. Whoops. See? That's why you don't take selfies. Also, tourists love to go to a beautiful, cute town called Georgetown. Here we have the Google Maps of the DC. Over here is the center, the Mallway, and here we have the area of Georgetown. Georgetown is a very rich area with just all kinds of shopping. People go there to shop. They go there to have a nice evening out on the town, to the bars, the restaurants in Georgetown. They're some of the nicest in Washington, D.C. And here's another glimpse. It's a small area. And you must, if you go there, go to the famous Georgetown cupcakes. They have the nicest cupcakes in the world. So, moving on, we've talked about what tourists do in DC. Now, let's talk about what do people do if they live in DC. And I am lucky because I did live in DC, and I loved every minute of it. And here are a few things that people do if they live there. Number one, DC has some very famous, very high-quality universities. George Washington University, Georgetown University, Howard University, and American University. All of these are top-notch universities, excellent schools. So many students will come to the district to go to school, go to college. And it's a great place to go to college because there's lots of job opportunities around, lots of interesting job opportunities. But sometimes, before you have a job, you have an internship. Lots and lots. So this is a very good cartoon of what an internship is and sometimes what people think of it. So here it says, they're rowing the boat, and he says, are you in the internship program as well? Because really, internships are free work. You get a job for free. You don't get any money from it. And of course, many people think that it's a problem because you can only get an internship if you can pay for it, basically. You pay for work. And the company gets to do this because you need a job. because if you don't have work experience, you can't get a real job, so they get all these 22-year-old college students to work for free, and they can. And DC is one of the biggest places for internships in the country. Over 40,000 interns come to DC every summer. Increases the population, actually, quite a bit. And 6,000 of these internships are in Congress alone. These are, all the Congress internships are unpaid. But not just political internships. Of course, that's a big one. 6,000 in Congress alone are political internships. But also people come for journalism, advertising, and international business. So they talk about international issues. And of course, DC is quite an international city.
And for rowing also, yeah.
And they're rowing, yeah, they're working hard. So after you have your internship or you're finished with your job, it's 5 o'clock p.m., you go to what Americans call happy hour. Happy hour is, I miss it, I don't think it's, do you have happy hour in Russia?
Every hour is
Every hour is happy hour. So happy hour is between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Drinks are very cheap at this hour in America. Most restaurants have some kind of special for happy hour. So drinks are half price or a couple dollars off. So after work, it's very, very common you go from work to the bar to home. And when you go to the bar, you maybe meet with clients. It's a good time to do business with people. Or you can just go with your coworkers and then you go home. And DC has some really fun places to do this. Many of their bars are theme bars. As you can see up here, this is a bar in DC. It's also an indoor golf course. So you can play golf and drink your beer. Really fun. It's called the H Street Country Club. This is my personal favorite, called Recessions. Their title is Too Much for Your Money. They give you like a beer that's like this. It's like a bucket. The boardroom, you can play any kinds of board games that you want. And this is Quigley's Pharmacy, also known as Tonic. It used to be a pharmacy, and now it is a bar. So it's fun. You can also go to concerts at the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center is a world-famous place for concerts, and it's beautiful too. And every day at 6 o'clock, they have free concerts for everyone. You could just go and see a free concert. I went many times. This is an example. If you're going to DC tonight, you're going to be in DC tonight and you want to see a concert at the Kennedy Center, this is their schedule for today, tomorrow, the next few days. So today, they actually don't have a concert, they have a comedian who will come and tell jokes. And the next day, the Blues Alley Youth Orchestra, they are known for having strange, unusual types of concerts. So like African dance, chanting, singing concert, or jazz, like from New Orleans. Really different, diverse musical productions. And for more music, you can see jazz in the Sculpture Gardens. Every Friday in DC, in the summers, you go to the Smithsonian Sculpture Gardens, and very popular, as you can see. You can sit in the lawn and listen to jazz music, and they also sell sangria at the same time. Very nice. Another important point of living in DC people love rooftops. They love to be on top of buildings. In the summer, it's very hot in DC. So it's very popular to have these type of rooftop restaurants and bars where you could sit and have fun with your friends. And you can look out across the DC sky. And even just, you can go on the rooftop of your own house, your own apartment. Very nice place to spend some time. Another thing that you can do on a rooftop is go swimming. There's a pool party every Sunday, and you can go to this rooftop and hang out, meet new people. This brings many, many people every year. Another classic element of DC is brunch. What is brunch?
Breakfast and lunch together.
Breakfast and lunch together. So you wake up on a Sunday morning and you call your friends and you meet at this outdoor place and you have brunch. So what must you order? You must order 2 drinks, mimosa and coffee. It's absolutely necessary to get both of those things. Mimosa is champagne and orange juice mixed together. And any food you want to eat, you can eat at brunch. It can be lunch food, it can be breakfast food, waffles, quiches, eggs benedict, bacon, anything you want, you can have. DC also loves baseball. They love to watch the Nationals play. And the Nationals just recently became popular because they didn't used to be very good. Now they're good and people like them. I don't like the Nationals, and there's one reason I don't like them. And that is because when it's the Nationals game, after the game, this is what the Metro looks like. It's terrible. I don't like baseball, and I don't like this. So, no, I don't like the Nationals. Many people in DC, in their free time, like to play kickball. Does anyone know what kickball is? Kickball. You do some kicking. You definitely do some kicking. It's the same as baseball, but instead of throwing the ball, they roll the ball and someone kicks it. And then they run around the bases. It's baseball for people who are not good at sports. So, so these people, they're not good at sports, they play kickball. And it's for most like 20, 25-year-olds around DC. They get on these teams, and all over DC they play each other in kickball in the summer. And I highly recommend going to Eastern Market. Actually, you have such things all over Russia. They're called rynok, but we don't have that very much in America. So this is like the one place, if you miss Russia, you're in DC, you miss Russia, you miss the rynok, you go to Eastern Market. And you get fresh produce, fresh meat, cheeses, wines, all kinds of fresh food. It's rare. Most people just go to the grocery store. And one more thing that you must do. This is my advice list of the 4th of July, what you do, what you shouldn't do. What you should do is you wear as much red, white, and blue as you can. It's convenient because you're from Russia, so if you want to celebrate America, you wear red, white, and blue. You want to celebrate Russia, you wear red, white, and blue. It's either way. It works for you. I also recommend that you watch fireworks from a rooftop. It's the perfect place. My friends we were watching on a roof over the National Mallway, and as you can see the National Monument, a beautiful place to watch the fireworks. And you can sing songs like I'm Proud to be an American or Born in the USA. Just any time during the day you can sing. At any time.
Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah?
What?
Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen, yes. Yes, you're correct.
I was born in Russia.
But what you should not do not come to the National Mallway late. It gets very crowded very quickly, so you need to get there early if you're going to go. And also, you saw the Metro after the Nationals game. Imagine that, but way worse when it's the 4th of July. Don't try to ride the Metro. It's a bad idea. So we've seen what tourists do. We've seen what residents do, people who live there. But what do the rest of Americans think about DC? And they do think about it. They do think about DC. So TV Today has many shows that are about DC, and they're very popular. So The West Wing, it was popular. It's not on anymore. People still watch it. But 2 of the most popular shows in America today are Scandal and House of Cards. Does anyone watch either of these shows?
Scandal.
You watch Scandal? Awesome! We need to talk later. Last night I watched...
Not every
Part.
but...
What do you think?
It's very interesting. It's just unusual way to see the president.
It's true. Yeah, I'll explain that. The Scandal is about this woman, Olivia Pope, and her job is to fix problems of politicians. So there's some kind of scandal, and her job is to make the scandal go away for the politician. It's based on a real person who does this job, and so actually she is in a relationship with the president, a secret relationship. It's kind of a ridiculous show, but it's very, very popular in America, and it shows how Americans love gossip about DC, and they love political scandals, and they think it's very interesting and sexy and glamorous to be in DC and to be at the top of power. It does show dark sides of DC as well. But House of Cards is a very different type of show from Scandal. House of Cards is a much darker show about a man who will do anything to get to the top. And House of Cards is an ugly vision of DC, where someone will they don't care, they don't have morals. Although the main character, Frank Underwood, he is the main character of House of Cards. This is the person who just wants to be president. And he does horrible, horrible things in the show. It's awful to watch. But everyone cheers for him. You love him, you hate him. And here is one of his quotes. There is no solace above or below, only us, small, solitary, striving, battling one another. I pray to myself, for myself. So he is this godlike person. See, this is, you might recognize this, the Lincoln Memorial, and he has blood running down his hands. It's an ugly vision of DC, and I think it is a lot of Americans' fears about what DC might be. It's very scary. But I recommend it. It's a great show. It's excellent. So now we have some time for any questions that you have. There's Barack Obama playing basketball. So what questions do you have for me?
Yeah, I got a question, but my question may seem a little bit disturbing.
Okay.
So anyhow, what is exhibited in the Holocaust Museum?
So the Holocaust Museum, when you go in, they give you a card. It will say someone's name on it, like Frank Heigl, for example. And it will say, Frank Heigl was a 12-year-old boy, like you are him. You are this person. And you go into the museum, and it's like going through the Holocaust. So you get on you can go through a cart, like a train. You see different pictures of experiments. You can see videos of different Nazi experiments, the scientific experiments. You see, one of the most famous things that you see is the Holocaust Museum collected the shoes of the people who were in concentration camps, who died. And you walk through a bridge, and underneath the bridge is tons and tons of shoes. Some examples. And at the end of the Holocaust Museum, you find out whether your person lived or died. It's a very emotional experience, but it's very powerful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
No questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.